What are the greatest challenges presented to you by the script? And then right below we have described the challenges you foresee using the King's Quad as a theater space, weather, audibility. So basically, what could go wrong? A lot of things. In terms of, I mean, you've basically, the question is the quad is a theater space is practically answered in the question with the issues of weather and audibility. There's no denying that it's a very difficult space to work with. I think that's what makes I think that's an exciting challenge as opposed to a kind of, you know, problem with the project, I guess. In terms of weather, it is unbelievably exciting, I find, when you're in an outdoor play and it starts to rain. This is what theater is. It's not a movie when you can, call cut and you can redo it so it's perfect. You're in live theater, and I mean, pardon my French during this, interview, but shit happens and you're gonna have to deal with it. And with audibility, of course, that's always going to be a challenge. That's why God created vocal exercises. So I think that working with the space will always be challenging, but that's one of the reasons why Classics in the Quad is such an exciting endeavor, is because we do use this kind of ridiculous space. And then I think an upside of the space too, like the steps, it was just like they were made to be a theater. The levels to work with. Something I would love to do, the steps, of course, are used all the time, but I'd love to use too kind of the mini pillars, the railings, the ledges that go along the sides, I think could be used a lot more. Also, and we would, of course, need to talk to the library staff about this. But the scene when the women, when Lysistrata and her peers have, locked themselves in the temple, I think we could go into that little antechamber of the library, and it has windows. There are so many things. And so it presents a lot of challenges, and it also presents a lot of opportunities. In terms of the script, I think there are some challenges related to kind of costume props. At one point, the men, the chorus of old men, are holding these little pots of fire and are kind of blowing into them, and you're supposed to see flames come out. But once again, this is, workable with, imagination and creativity. In terms of costume, of course we would, there's the classic toga look. But of course, in some cases, they have layers. I think a lot of the men strip down to their knickers at one point. These are all things that, when you get a design team together, you talk about. Then, biggest thing is at the peak of the play, you have so many people on stage at one time. It's an exciting challenge, but it's a daunting one. I've worked with plays before with rather huge casts that were very movement based, and it presents a challenge, from a director's perspective, visually, to make so many people, be aesthetically pleasing all at one time, and also from a timeline perspective. I know this is a very fast moving production. A month, 5 weeks. And working with that many people will be a challenge. But challenges were made to be overcome. What kind of budget do you think you'll need in order to pull the show off? Money. There really is no substantial set to be working with, and if there was any, it would probably take the form of, fabric. Or the same with costumes. So many of the costumes are, bed sheets, which, many of us have already. I don't want to give a definitive answer, because I am flexible, and I think that tight budgets are, opportunities to get creative. Sounds very silly, but if I had to put a number on it, it would be wonderful to have $200 under our belt. If it was zero, we'd make something work. So this is something that, if I was lucky enough to be chosen to do this, this is something I'd like to discuss further with a producer. Okay, moving right along. How many actors will you be looking to cast. A lot of this depends on how big you make the choruses. There's the old women's chorus, the old men's chorus, and then there are a number of, young Athenians and, young Spartans. So we're looking anywhere between, 25 and like 45 in terms of the script. Of course, that number would become more exact if I was selected to really hammer out the details of who's necessary and who's not. But I think it'd be safe to say between 30 and 40 people. Have you had any past involvement with classics in the quad? Indeed, I have. In my first year, I acted in Bethany Hindmarsh's Agamemnon, and I was a member of the chorus. It was an incredible experience. My first experience with the KTS, and really is what inspired me and drove me to continue on to get involved with the KTS. It's something I heard about on my very first tour at King's from the incredibly good-looking and very talented Harry Sawchuk, and it's very, very dear to my heart. What is the nature of your past theatrical experience? Have you directed before? Describe your strengths and weaknesses as a director. Okay, in high school, I attended Canterbury High School in Ottawa, which is an art school in Ottawa, where I took their theater program. It was a fairly intensive program for 4 years that gave me, a really solid introduction to acting, voice, movement, mime, mask, the basics. Also introduced me to directing, to stage managing, to tech work, to lighting design, costume design, set design, etc., etc. So through those 4 years of high school, I got a kind of whirlwind experience of theater, whatever that is. So I do have some experience directing, not a huge amount, and not since I've attended King's. And from that experience, I would say my strength, one of my strengths as a director is that I'm really not keen at letting things go. At least if it's early enough in the process, and something's not quite working, or something's not quite right, or there isn't the right kind of chemistry, I'm never one to say, well, it's good enough. I really like to push things. I really like to push people in a productive way. I have a vision, and I want to stick to it. So that would be my strength, which ties into my weakness, in that my vision is also very fluid. I am definitely a think by doing kind of person. I love bouncing ideas off people. I like seeing things. I like trying a lot of different things, and I think that's a really wonderful and a really important process. But in a very personal way, sometimes I can get carried away. Sometimes I get silly, and I just need to make sure I'm working with people who know me and trust me to rein me in. Do you have names of people you've spoken to about being a part of your crew, stage management, costuming, etc.? Not to a huge extent. There's one person who I've talked to in particular. Many of you know her, Katie Middleton in my year. I've talked to you about working with as a dramaturg or turge, depending on your preference. And I think, in a play like this, I think this would be one of the most valuable participants. I've experience in theater and directing, and some experience in classical theater and directing classical theater. But what I don't have is expertise on these texts, which are translated. And the translations themselves are hugely important. We've already been talking in the last couple of weeks about which ones she's been reading, which one I'm reading, and which one's best. And so she's someone I'm very keen on working with. Others I would start thinking about more seriously if I was accepted into this position.